It's great to be back.
We got a really thought-provoking thought experiment sent in by a listener. And
Oh, yeah, this one's a doozy.
this one really gets into some deep philosophical questions about identity and choice and the nature of reality.
I love these ones.
So let's jump into it.
Let's do it.
So the basic premise of this thought experiment is that you're given a choice between continuing your current life
Okay.
with all of its joys and sorrows and loved ones, but with the added caveat that those that you love, the people that are closest to you, are all living under what you consider to be pretty serious delusions.
Okay.
Like really harmful delusions.
Right.
And then on the other hand, you're offered this like perfect life, this upgraded life where everything is seemingly better, happier, more fulfilling.
Right.
But in this new reality, your loved ones from your original life still exist, but they believe that you're gone forever.
Oh, wow.
And they're continuing to live with these beliefs that you consider to be harmful delusions.
So you get a better life, but at what cost, right?
Yeah.
Like, is it really a better life if you know that everybody you know and love thinks that you died?
Are suffering because of it.
Right, and are maybe, like, making bad decisions based on these delusions.
Yeah, and I think, like, one of the first things that jumps out at me with this thought experiment
Yeah.
is just this idea of, like, what makes you you?
Right, like, what is it that defines your identity?
Yeah, is it your memories, your relationships, the reality that you inhabit? Like,
And if you were to step into this new reality, would you still be you?
yeah, or would you be like a facsimile?
A simulated version.
Yeah, and then how do you even begin to weigh the value of one life over another?
Right, because the thought experiment presents this better life like it's objectively better.
Right, everything's upgraded. It's like the premium version.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But is happiness really the only metric we should be using to judge the quality of a life?
And like, whose happiness are we prioritizing here? Like, is it just your own happiness, or do you have to take into account the happiness of others?
Right. And even within like the framework of this thought experiment, how do we know that the people in this better life, even though they look and act just like your loved ones in the original life,
Yeah.
how do we know that they're actually the same people?
Yeah, like what if their underlying consciousness is completely different?
Exactly. Like, what if they just share the same memories and experiences up to a certain point and then they diverge?
So it's like you're with strangers who just happen to look and act like the people you love.
Exactly. And that adds a whole other layer of creepiness to this whole thing, doesn't it?
It totally does.
Like, would you even feel comfortable being intimate with these people, knowing that they might not be who you think they are on some fundamental level?
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, how much of our connection to other people is based on like shared history and experience versus just like surface level personality traits?
Exactly.
I mean, this thought experiment is really starting to feel like a horror movie.
It kind of is, right? Like, it's got all the elements of a good Twilight Zone episode.
Little Twilight Zone vibes.
But I think that's what makes it so compelling, because it forces us to confront some really uncomfortable questions about the nature of reality and the choices that we make.
Yeah, so like, how do we even start to make sense of this from a philosophical standpoint?
Well, there are a few different frameworks we can use to analyze the situation.
Okay.
One is utilitarianism, which you're probably familiar with.
Yeah, that's the whole like greatest good for the greatest number kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So from a utilitarian perspective, you might argue that choosing the better life is the right choice because it results in more overall happiness.
Okay.
You're happier. Your new family is happy. Everyone's happy except for like your original family who thinks you're dead.
Yeah.
But maybe their suffering is outweighed by the happiness of everyone else in the new reality.
But how do you even measure something like that?
Right, that's the problem with utilitarianism. It's very difficult to quantify happiness and suffering, especially when you're dealing with different people who have different values and experiences.
And like different relationships to you.
Exactly. Like, how do you compare the grief of a parent who's lost a child to the joy of that same child who's now living in a paradise but has forgotten about their parent?
Yeah. That's tough.
It's impossible to make that kind of calculation without imposing your own subjective values onto this situation.
So utilitarianism might not be the best tool for tackling this particular dilemma.
Probably not.
Okay, so what are some other philosophical approaches that we could use?
Well, another one is deontology.
Deontology, no, that one's a little less familiar.
Yeah, deontology is all about moral duty and obligation.
Okay.
So instead of focusing on the consequences of an action, deontology looks at the inherent rightness or wrongness of the action itself.
Okay.
So in this scenario, a deontologist might ask, what are your duties to each family?
That's a good question.
Yeah, like did you make any promises to your original family?
Like to always be there for them or to take care of them or...
Exactly. And if you did make those promises, then a deontologist would argue that you have a moral obligation to keep those promises, even if it means sacrificing your own happiness.
Wow, so even if their reality is based on something that I consider to be a delusion,
Yeah.
I'm still bound by the commitments that I made to them.
That's the deontological perspective.
That's heavy.
It's a very different way of looking at morality than utilitarianism.
Yeah, for sure.
And it highlights the fact that sometimes doing the right thing isn't always easy or pleasurable.
So, like, even if this better life is, like, beckoning me with all of its promises of happiness and fulfillment,
Yeah.
I might still have a moral obligation to stay in my current life.
That's right.
And to try to help my loved ones, even if they're living under these delusions.
Exactly. And maybe that's the real lesson of this thought experiment.
Oh, okay. I like that.
It's not really about choosing between lives, but about understanding the weight of our choices and their impact on others, even across different realities.
So it's like a reminder that our actions have consequences.
Always.
Even if those consequences are playing out in a reality that we may never experience.
Right, because even if we can't see those consequences, doesn't mean they're not real.
Man, this is a lot to unpack.
It is, isn't it?
Like we've barely scratched the surface of all the philosophical implications of this thought experiment.
Yeah, we could probably talk about this for hours.
For days.
But I think we've given our listeners plenty to chew on for now.
I think so too, and hopefully it sparked some interesting thoughts and maybe even some healthy debate.
And maybe even inspired some people to go out and read some philosophy.
Yes, definitely do that.
There's a whole world of fascinating ideas out there waiting to be explored.
All right, so that's our deep dive for today.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
Always a pleasure. And to our listener, thanks for sending in this mind-bending thought experiment.
Keep those thought experiments coming.
Yeah, we love tackling these big questions with you.
And who knows, maybe next time we'll finally crack the code on the meaning of life.
Maybe one day.
One can dream.
All right, until next time, keep thinking deeply.
And keep questioning everything.
We'll see you soon.
See you later.